What's up, football fans? And do John and I have something special today? It's draft day. That's right. It's an extended version of our normal shenanigans that we like to have here. We're going to take you through the best of what FanDuel Sportsbook has to offer for tonight's draft. John, are you ready to do this?
Super excited, Dave. I can't believe it's just a matter of moments away. We've been building up to this, like we said, for 3 or 4 weeks now. Great to have it nearly upon us now.
There are some pretty simple bets that we'll talk about who's going to be picked first and some crazy ones that we'll get to at the end. But let's just start at the top of the draft and simply talk who is going to be chosen first. Who is number one? And the odds say it can only be one man.
Yeah, Joe Burrow, quarterback from LSU, broke all the records in accuracy for passing last year since people have started collecting these numbers. They have a really amazing season for him. Out of nowhere, coming from a third pick from Ohio State the previous year, but nobody is passing up on him. A prohibitive favorite right now. The biggest bet we saw, Dave, was a $14,500 bet a couple of days ago to win just over $200. Now, I know he's going number one, but I'm not sure I'd risk 14.5 grand to win just 200.
You push the odds even further. Right now, you'd have to risk $100,000 to win 100. So he's minus 100,000. I don't think I've ever seen those odds, even in an in-game, Duke winning by 60 points in the second half. You don't even see minus 100,000 odds.
No, we normally have them suspended by then, but I guess the interest in Burrow and for people to see how big of a certainty it is, makes sense for us to just leave the odds where they are and let people see what his chance of going number one really looks like.
Maybe a month ago or so, the number two pick wasn't such a clear-cut thing. It was maybe Tua, maybe Chase Young, and now the odds clearly have it that it's going to be Chase Young at number two.
Yeah, he's a super talented defensive end, Dave, as we know. As you said, Tua was probably favourite for this market, or at least second favourite, just behind Chase Young when we opened this market. We opened him up as a minus 145 favourite on the market. Anybody who played early is on a ton of value, down to minus 3,000 right now as we talk. Fully expect him to go back to Washington where he played high school football and see him in a Redskin uniform next year.
It's a little bit trickier at number three, and then we'll stop there as far as which positions are going to be drafted and what spots. But the Detroit Lions have the number three pick for now. Of course, there are teams that might want to trade up, and that could change things here. But if the Lions do make that pick, a lot of people are saying that they want Jeffrey Okudah, the cornerback out of Ohio State.
Yeah, another Buckeye here. Okudah looks a really good talent at cornerback, a position where we know the Lions are weak and need some help. Just a case of how valuable that pick is to the teams that lie a few beneath them, Dave, whether or not they'll trade up. And this could be one area where, we're not getting full visibility of what teams' plans are. But for now, he's minus 125, taking 60% of the money to go as a third overall pick to Detroit.
And one other fun one, you can also say who's going to be in the top three in exact order. A lot of different combinations there, but Burrow, Young, and Okudah would be the favorite.
Yeah, effectively the same price as Okudah to go number three, Dave, at plus 125. Obviously, we know the other two lads are going 1 and 2. Again, 60% of the money there for that order. This order, 1, 2, 3, was as big as plus 200 when we opened it, as we said, now into the plus 125.
Well, now that we've dealt with some of the more predictable spots at the top, let's talk about some specific positions. When you go to sportsbook.fanduel.com or on the FanDuel Sportsbook app, you click on NFL Draft and then player props. Once there, you're going to look for first player drafted by position. And once you see that tab, quarterback's obvious, John. That's not going to show up. But let's talk about a couple of the not so obvious positions. We're asking which player is going to be drafted first. Let's start with wide receiver. And guess what? CeeDee Lamb is now favored over Jerry Jeudy. This one's been going back and forth.
Absolutely flip-flopping, Dave. You're 100% right. I don't think bettors can decide who should be the favorite. For me, it's very, very clear, though. I think Jerry Jeudy's an exceptional talent. I'd be really, really surprised if teams are willing to pass on him as the first wide receiver. Right now, he stands as just about the second favorite in what looks to be a two-horse race. I know you have some love for both Henry Ruggs and Justin Jefferson in that market, but I'd be very surprised if anyone's willing to pass on Jerry Jeudy. Despite him being second favorite, Dave, again, over 50% of the money that we've taken has been for the Alabama receiver to go number one. So if he goes number one, we'll lose money. and I expect that to be the case. I just can't see people passing a talent like him by.
I'm a CeeDee Lamb guy. I just love what I saw, his catching ability and his playmaking ability all year long there at Oklahoma. Let's talk about running backs. This almost looks like a two-horse race as well. You have DeAndre Swift and Jonathan Taylor. Swift a little more on the small side, but it seems like he's getting a lot of looks.
Yeah, a lot of love for the Georgia running back in DeAndre Swift. We're minus 195 as it stands right now, is a pretty strong favourite. Jonathan Taylor's plus 270, a second favourite, obviously, from the Badgers. But we've saw interesting money in this market, Dave, for J.K. Dobbins. I keep a little eye out for him at a little bit bigger odds as we get closer to the first running back, which could be an all-time record low in terms of where the first one goes. Seems to be a lot of people concentrating quarterbacks, obviously wide receivers with such a depth of talent in that position, but also offensive linemen for a bit of a change look like they're going to go high.
Well, speaking of the offensive lineman, it's going to show up on the site as the first hog molly that is drafted. I think it's going to be Tristan Wirfs, the offensive lineman out of Iowa. I've been high on him all along, but there's a new shooter in town that's taken the money. Jedrick Wills Jr. is now the favorite over Wirfs.
You're 100% right, Dave. I know you've been telling me about Tristan Wirfs from Iowa for the last 3 or 4 weeks, but effectively all of the money has been for Wills from Alabama into a minus 165 favorite right now. But you're right, it looks to be a two-horse race between them for what I believe is the first hog molly. I have no idea what that means even.
It is a collegiate offensive lineman. That is the term. So we'll see who it may be. Other players or positions that are available to select who's going to be first: tight ends, linebackers, safety, and you even have who will the first kicker be. That's crazy, John.
Yeah, I mean, we just want to give people loads of different looks at the draft, Dave. They can wager on whatever it is takes their fancy. A lot of other positions. We've talked about the highly skilled positions. Let's not knock on the kickers either and give them their moment in the sunshine.
Now, this is also very cool for those that are fans of certain teams out there: Giants, Jets, Eagles, Colts. You have specific props for these teams saying which position are they going to choose as their first pick and which player are they going to choose as their first pick. How'd you come up with that idea?
You know, there's a lot of local interest, a lot of local loyalty to their teams, the teams that they support or teams that play in their areas. We found that in New Jersey straight away with the Giants, and that's probably been one of the most interesting markets that we've traded so far. Offensive lineman as a position is now as short as minus 400. Can't see any other option there right now. 90% of the money has been for that has that as a prohibitive favorite, so not surprising for that. Just giving people choice, Dave, effectively.
So if you think it's going to be an offensive lineman, then you could take it to the next level and just say exactly which player are the Giants going to draft. Wills Jr. is the favorite. Then you have Tristan Wirfs. And then you have a guy like Isaiah Simmons. Maybe they don't go with an offensive lineman and they take him on defense.
Yeah, Isaiah Simmons would actually be the worst result in that market for us, despite all of that money being for the offensive line in the position. He is third favorite right now because of that move for the offensive lineman, which makes sense, David. But Isaiah Simmons at 5-1 right now, it will be far and away our only loser in that book right now as we stand.
And as far as the other New York team, the New York Jets, they're a little bit more questionable as what they need. They also need offensive line, but they're in need of a wide receiver too. So if a great receiver is still available when it gets to the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Giants fan, Dave, so the Jets fans won't like me saying I think they need a hell of a lot more than one player up here. Right now, we've got 4-1 joint favorites as to who the first pick by the New York Jets will be. CeeDee Lamb is actually the worst result in the book here, quite a significant loser for us. It looks highly likely like that they may look at the receiver, just a question of who's still there when their pick comes around, Dave.
And it gets a little bit trickier as we fall further down these slots in the draft and we get to the Philadelphia Eagles. Who knows what's going to have happened by then? And, is a great receiver still going to be around, or are they going to find themselves needing something else? But that's another team that really is short on the wide receiver position.
Yeah, and obviously last year, Dave, came off such an injury-ravaged season that, effectively I think you might have got a run out for the Eagles. If you were still fit enough to run a route. I'm not sure that will be the case Right now, Justin Jefferson is the 2-1 favorite to be the first pick by the Philadelphia Eagles. I think he'd be an incredibly good pick and really well suited to Philadelphia. We know how shrewd they are, expect them to make good decisions. And 2-1, Justin Jefferson out of LSU is a strong favorite in that market.
And minus 230, by the way, as far as them choosing a wide receiver. Let's finish it off with the Indianapolis Colts and talk about what their needs are going to be. They need a lot of things. They need a receiver as well. They did pick up Phillip Rivers, and they still have Brissett, but on the long term, looking forward, they would love to get a nice young quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Andrew Luck is gone by the wayside, and that was the future of the franchise. As you said, Jacoby Brissett, and now Phillip Rivers looks likely to take that starting position. Jordan Love is the strong favorite in this market, or sorry, a tepid favorite, but the one that has seen the most amount of interest from our perspective. I think he's out of Utah State, 5-1 favorite right now. He'd be our worst result by a long way in that market, Dave.
And their odds for which position that they're going to choose, looking at receiver plus 140, quarterback plus 300, defensive lineman plus 310. So this one certainly a little bit more wide open. This cool bet, John. We're talking about which team a certain player is going to land with. And we'll start with Tua Tagovailoa, a guy that everybody thought would probably be the number one pick when he came out of college a few years back. But after staying with Alabama an extra year and having another injury last year, his stock really has fallen.
Yeah, a long way, Dave. I mean, I don't think I've ever been that high on him. We've talked about it repeatedly over the last few weeks. The challenges and risks that come with drafting a quarterback out of a team that are as well coached and stocked with talent as Alabama is always going to be a risk. When we opened up his draft position months ago, Dave, we opened it up at over under 2.5. Fully expected him to go 2 or 3. That's all the way down to 5.5 right now. People only want the under as well. So I'd be glad to see him going 2, but it's not going to happen. Realistically, we've consigned ourselves to a loss in that market. It looks to be a 2-horse race, Dave. The Miami Dolphins is a slight favorite at 5, and the Chargers is a strong second favorite at plus 210 right now to take him at 6. You know, as you alluded to, there's a chance that there's trades going to happen around 2 as well. So you could potentially see him go a little bit earlier. But I think he's destined for one of those 2 teams.
Yeah, but if the Chargers trade up in the leapfrog the Dolphins, then maybe they get him. And don't forget, Herbert out of Oregon, he could actually get chosen before Tua anyway. So that's a good one. Let's talk about another player coming out of Alabama, their wide receiver, absolute star, Jerry Jeudy. Who's going to land him?
Yeah, Jerry Jeudy's a really interesting one, a super talented player that I've always been very high on. Huge move for the Jacksonville Jaguars in this market, Dave. They're all the way into plus 360. I have bets in the last few weeks at 10-1 on them from sharp customers who identified that there was a strong chance that Jerry could end up with the Jaguars. It looked a lot of the mock drafts like he was going to either go to Denver, I think at 12, or even Las Vegas Raiders at 14. But it looks like the Jaguars are hunting around Jerry Jeudy. Wouldn't be surprised to see him in Florida.
And how about quarterback Jordan Love out of Utah State? His market has Jacksonville as the front runner, but they have Minshew. You know, do they need another young quarterback?
I think they do, Dave. I mean, Minshew's kind of divided a lot of people's opinion on his talents. He looks okay to me, but I think if you got an opportunity to take a decent quarterback here, as Jacksonville do, I think Jordan Love could fit the narrative that they need. It's a pretty open market. They're a favorite, as you said, at plus 300, but we know that they could look at Jerry Jeudy a little earlier, and therefore, does he end up at somewhere like Indianapolis Colts, for example? They're second favorites at 4-1, and then the Saints at 6-1 are next in, along with New England. So a watching brief for Jerry Jeudy. Hard to know what the Utah State graduate is going to do or where he's going to end up, but that's where we've seen the money so far.
Well, those 3 guys are certainly first-round picks, but let's talk about a guy that's most likely going to go in the second round, and that's Oklahoma quarterback Jalen Hurts, John.
Yeah, Dave, his stock's fallen as well over the last few weeks. We've seen him go, I think, from 54.5, which is his draft position that we opened him up as, all the way now into the low 70s. And as you said, more than likely going to go in round 2 right now. In terms of the teams that draft him, the most amount of money that I've seen has actually been for the Jaguars at 12-1. The favorites, however, are the Steelers, and it's good to see you representing today, Dave, and the Raiders, which look likely to be the 2 that fight it out for Jalen Hurts.
There are so many bets right now available at sportsbook.fanduel.com on the NFL draft. Just about everything you can think of. Position totals, school totals, conference totals, match bets. Who's going to be drafted? This guy or that guy? Will a certain player be drafted in the first round? Who will the last player drafted be? That's Mr. Irrelevant. Will a player be drafted in the top 5 or the top 10? My favorite bets, John, here's the 2 that I like the best. Will there be over or under 2.5 Clemson players drafted in the first round? That's under. And as far as the SEC, will there be more SEC players or any other players, any other schools drafted in the first round? I say we'll take the field. So those are my 2 best bets.
Dave, I really like that. It sounds like an absolute lock. So I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll put an odds boost up at plus 100, even money from now till the start of the draft. Everybody, it's just like going to the ATM and getting a free $50 out.
All right, that's the Dave Weaver special. It'll show up on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Good luck with your bets tonight. Enjoy the draft and gamble responsibly.